All right, our next speaker is a current lead developer of the Selenium library. He has been working with robot framework since 2011. He has been active community member all these years, and 2016 he started Selenium as a Selenium library developer. Please welcome onto the stage Tatu Aalto.
Kiitos. Wow. That was cool. Thank you. Yeah, I'm the Selenium library lead developer. I work in F-Secure as a senior software engineer in test with a Windows antivirus client. And thanks for him to ruin me, because I had questions and I was going to make you stand, but just raise your hand. That's enough. So raise your hand if you are using Selenium library, please. Yeah, almost everybody. Thanks again. Keep your hands up if you are using a library on top of the Selenium library. Not so many anymore, but 1/3 perhaps. And keep your hands up if you have built that library. So yeah, a little bit less, few tens. So after lunch, everybody else can go sleep. The guys and people that kept their hands up, you should listen. Nah, not really. I hope that it is good for everybody. So in Selenium Library 4, the plugin API was born. And the idea of the plugin API was actually born in the previous RoboCon in 2019. I had wonderful discussions with many people, and they all, well, not all, but many of them wanted something into the Selenium library. Many times they wanted things that are conflicting with each other. And then I gave my usual answer that, yeah, it sounds like a nice idea, but it doesn't quite fit in the purpose of the Selenium library. Then you should actually build your own library. And it's really easy, and it's not a big deal. Just go and do it. I was trying to be polite, saying no. And I don't know did you succeed, but if I didn't, I apologize about that. But because I did have so many of those kind of discussions, and I want this thing, which is true that in my opinion it doesn't fit. But then it came to my mind that when I build my own libraries, I have to actually write quite a lot of code to get everything working nicely. I have to get the library instance and do stuff or inherit and then get the IDE working. I actually have to write quite a lot of code. So I was thinking that perhaps there would be a better way. And then I was playing with the idea with a few people, and then I decided I will code it. And then in the 4.0 release, the plugin API was so what does it do? It's a Python class that must inherit one thing out of the Selenium library. But what it enables you to do, that you can add keywords directly to the library, inside of the library. You don't anymore have to write your own library, and you don't have to care about the robot framework library API, that do you use the static or hybrid or the dynamic library API. And if you are not happy with some keyword implementation inside of the Selenium library, the plugin API allows you to override the existing keywords. If you're not happy how the open browser keyword works, it has too many arguments or too little arguments, so it doesn't quite fit your need, then you can replace that with the plugin API. And then you don't have to care about the library search order and that kind of stuff, which is doable in the robot framework, or prefixing with the library name in the front of the keyword. And it also allows you to get better access to the internal modules and methods inside of the Selenium library. And I think the best example is the Selenium testability thing that which Jani did build. Would you stand up? Woo! Selenium testability used to be a library, and it was not discussion with Jani for some odd reason, but there's other things that he should be blamed for. But it used to be a library, but then he did convert it as a plugin, and Did you say something that was easier to build and you could delete the code and it worked?
Yeah, essentially, like the best part of it is that I don't need to duplicate the code in the library.
Mike.
Yeah, okay.
Is it on? Okay, so the best part was that I got to offload a lot of my own code, so I didn't need to duplicate from the features from the Selenium library itself. I could just rely on it and just overwrite those things that I actually wanted. It became much easier to maintain also in that way after adding the kind of like a plugin interface.
Yeah. So no copy pasting, less code for you. Yeah. In short, thank you. And let's try to do a demo. It's my first time live coding. Can you see it in the back? Raise your hands if you can see it. You also with the mobile phone, can you see it? Okay, great, thanks. So, it's a Python class. Its name is a plugin, but name can be anything. You can have multiple plugins if you want. The only thing mandatory for the plugin is this thing. You must inherit the library component out of the Selenium library. And it's a good thing. Even though it restricts you a little bit, it is a nice thing because it makes the iter work nicely. And if you want to do an init, you must take in the context. Context is the instance of the Selenium library, which is in the robot framework side. And if you want more details about, let's discuss after this thing, because I don't have any more time to explain it. It would take workshop. You should have come on the Tuesday workshop. There was plenty of time, and you need to do that thing. But if you don't have init, then you don't need that stuff. All deleted. So let's write a keyword. And Selenium library internally uses that keyword decorator, that thing over there, to mark which methods are keywords. Like Pekka was saying in this conference that it's really nice to have a good API in your classes. You have methods that are keywords, you have methods which are not keywords but are still in the public API, and you can still have easily private methods. So let's return self driver, that's the currently active driver, and current URL. See, it did work. Did you notice? Who did notice? Nobody, thank you. Let's do it again. Self, driver, WebDriver stuff. That you don't get out of the box when you do your own library. That works out of the box. There's also other handy methods, info, no, not that letter, log something. Close enough. And I think somebody did ask this thing. Def element text self locator elements self find elements. Find me many elements. There was also a singular of those. It returns you the first element. That method returns you a list of elements in the hand. And it is all the keywords in the Selenium library goes through that method to find the elements. And if you want, there's a way to replace that. But let's find elements, locators, and let's return all the text out of the element text for element in elements. Ooh, many elements. Yeah, that should work. Plugin. Oh, that's Aalto height. Darn. Typo. I make a lot of typos. Yeah?
Text is T-E-X-S now in the line 13.
I'm Rene, you say.
Go 5 to the right.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
And 1 L, and then a T. Yes.
Ah, thank you. Yes, in a live stage. Thank you. Woo, thank you. Yes. Or that's mob programming, everybody shouts. And Rene, now you are the official driver, you listen to the crowd, and you tell me what I do. Done deal? Where was I? Yes, here. Yeah. I import the library. I use the plugin argument to import. The plugin is in the same directory as this code, or this robot framework tests. I open a web page, I use the URL and get element text. Yeah. Should work. Let's see what really happens. Ooh, exciting moment. Browser opens. Network works. One word. Yeah! Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. So the URL keyword is in the Selenium library. It comes from there. It returns the URL. And so does element text as a link. All the links. You have a lot of links in the Robot Framework IO page. Yeah. Yeah. And of course, getting a class or creating a class is a little bit overkill sometimes, but in the end, you also get the fully functional IDE out of the box. So it is pretty nice and neat setup. And it works pretty well. But the old way is not died. You can still have your libraries, extending Selenium library, and if you have a working library, it depends how you use it. Should you switch or should you keep? It's up to you. Both way works as nicely. If I would be a new thing, perhaps I would use the plugin API. It can be a simple thing. Jani's Selenium testability library is actually a pretty complex thing that he built. And it's up to you to choose. But what I would really like, I would like to get feedback, because we are a nice and quite big community, but we're awfully silent if everything works nicely. Or if there's a just tiny bit that you want to tune, then people don't usually tell. So please give feedback. That's my #1 thing that I would like to have. And there was other thing, which, there, full screen, which we can blame Jani. Jani wanted this thing. This is event firing WebDriver. Who has ever heard about event firing WebDriver? Like, yeah, 10, 20, perhaps even 30. Who has heard Robot Framework Listener API? Good. It's almost the same thing, except for the Selenium API. So, like in Robot Framework Listener API, Selenium event firing WebDriver will call a method out of your class before and after Selenium API gets called. And it's supported almost every Selenium API method, except when we create new WebDriver, meaning use the open browser keyword or some other way create a WebDriver, and it's not supported by the action chains. Who has used action chains? I get statistics, wonderful. Yeah, statistics is when it actually sends keyboard-like events to the browser. If you use the press keys keyword, that uses action chains internally to send the keyboard, pressing control on all those funny characters inside of the stuff. And also in that Selenium API, or that event firing WebDriver API, you get the driver. You can execute stuff, and you do wonderful things. So when it would be useful, it could be useful that if you have a dynamic application in your web pages. And before calling a keyword, you usually do await. But now you don't have to do the wait. You can bury the wait in the event-firing WebDriver. You can execute some JavaScript, get the status of the application. You can pull it, and then continue with the real Selenium API calling, like finding element or interacting with the element some way. And it comes automatic. You write few lines of code in this class, and you can throw all away the wait keywords from your test code. That's pretty neat. The other thing is that if you are this kind of visual type of testing, and you write a lot of capture, bake, screenshot keywords in multiple places, this testing, because in many places, before you do an interaction, you could call the driver, take a screenshot before and after you do the interaction. And you can embed in the log, and you don't anymore have to use the keywords to do that. And it has been a little bit out there, but it's good for anything that you want to do automatically before a keyword calls your Selenium API. Finding element, doing an interaction, whatever you want. Something that you want to do automatically, and something that perhaps you don't want to be visible in the test case level, because the waiting and clicking is not actually interesting for the user. So let's dial demoing again. Here's my listener. No coding this time. Thanks, René. And it's a class. Selenium says that you have to inherit that abstract event listener. That's the way the Selenium hooks up to the API calls, by using your class. And I don't do anything fancy. I just log. But here's before and after navigate to methods. And here's before and after click. And the last two ones on before and after, we write or do something. We write to the input field or write to the something. And I have a test. Same way as plugins, but it uses that event-firing WebDriver argument. It is not a plugin. But good thing about those that it uses internal the same stuff as Robot Framework would use libraries, so importing with the name or importing with the file name works. And small 3 or 4 simple test cases. Open browser, go to something, click eminent, and input text. And robot event firing. Yes, hopefully faster this time. Yeah, good. Same log. So in the browser actually, open browser keyword navigates to something. Therefore, the goDo was called before and after. And same does the goDo keyword before and after. So is the click element. Before the click, if you want to do something, if you want to do something after the click or after finding elements, I didn't have an example of that. And then input text before and after. 4 times actually. It's 4 times. It's there because it's the input text by default does 3 things. It finds the element, it clears the element, and it writes the text. Finding is not triggered by my plugin, but the clearing and inputting is triggered, and therefore it's 2 times. So you actually have to a little bit look what the keywords does before you can use the event-firing WebDriver stuff. And, I'm on a schedule. That's a rare thing. And was about it. And if you have any questions, before that, I'm also present in the sprints. I'm present the whole day, so if you want to come and discuss something, I'm looking new ideas, but what I will present next year in the RoboCon 2021, hopefully there will be a one. And now it's time for questions. Thank you.
You have all the questions.
Yeah.
I also have all
Hello.
those questions. Hello.
Yeah, seems that I have a lot of questions. Regarding of the API, I think about the feedback, I think that's the right way to do it. And I have a question which is not related to Selenium library, but it's this decorator. So if I'm using this decorator keyword, is it already available, or is it only available in 3.2 robot framework version?
You mean the other guy?
Yeah.
Yeah. Pekka, when did it came?
All right. So what happens if I define that one? I have one method which defines that one, another one which doesn't have that one, and try to call from a robot side method which doesn't have that one. Is it failing?
I think it should.
All right.
Should it? Pekka, I think it should.
Just curious, we are not doing that currently, but that's something what we could investigate in our end.
You can mix with and without decorators.
Yeah.
But that's bad. I don't want to give too much options to developers, with all respect, of course, but
You can use the decorators for having different names than method titles as a keyword name than the method title. But here we have the dynamic library, so it needs the decorator.
Yeah. It uses the robot framework dynamic library API. Decorator is a marker that this method is a keyword. There's a behind-scenes background parsing, and it looks all those methods and goes through all the classes that have methods. It's actually given to it, and then it parses all the methods that has that decorator.
okay.
It is actually a good thing. I was also against it, but then I realized that I actually need it. I need methods that are keywords, but I also need the public API. But I don't want the public API always to be part of the keywords. And then I want private stuff in my class.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, that if we define the decorator, then I should be able to, let's say, close out that people are not using from the robot the functions which are not decorated. So I want to close that out. So basically I was just curious that can I basically, in quotes, force people just, okay, now for now on, you are only able to use methods which have this decorator from
Yes,
robot.
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Dynamic library.
All right, okay.
You have to use the robot framework dynamic library.
Then one extra question related to that, how PyCharm handles that one. If you're in PyCharm and you're creating a robot and then you have a library name, for example, and you press the dot, does it provide only the methods which are decorated?
When we can have the language server, PyCharm support is
That's all.
bad. PyCharm robot framework support is not good, let's put it that way. But when the language server hopefully arrives, that you hear from the keynote from Becky and other people that they are going to invest money building that. And then hopefully we can easily get better syntax highlighting and autocompletion and variables and going that. It is a pain in the ass. I did, before I became a maintainer for the Selenium library, I did build a plugin for the Sublime text, which has robot framework IDE-like features, and it's really pain in you know where. Not good. Not going to touch there.
As?
Yeah, you said it. Thank you. Next question.
About the distribution of those plugins or event-firing web drivers, now you just import Python files, but how about the kind of real distribution?
Yeah. Jan is a prime example of that. He's actually the only one that I know. That's why I keep him using his. His is distributed to PyPI. It uses the same internal logic that Robot Framework uses to find libraries. I use the same thing, but I just use it to import them as a plugins and not as a libraries in the Robot Framework side.
So basically, that's a different library. Let's say there's no plugins kind of argument at the importing, or just interested of that part.
Oh, you mean there is that argument, but if that would be in the model search path, which is not by default, that would work.
Okay,
yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Any more questions around that area here? Can you pass it here? Yeah, here in the front.
Yeah.
So far, so good.
Yeah.
Hi, Tatu. Can you have, in the event firing approach, can you have more than one listener? And if so, can it be programmatically added or remove the listener? Let's say during the code, can I add a listener?
More than one, I don't know.
Yeah.
I haven't tried. That actually depends on Selenium, how it behaves, because only thing Selenium library does that I find your class, and then I wrap the WebDriver around the event firer, and then rest is done by the Selenium. It's really small amount of code, and it depends actually on Selenium. Programmatically, yeah, I guess the only problem with that you would have to write some code that if you import Selenium library, if you open the browser, then the code currently is written so that that when it opens the browser and creates the webs, the wrapping happens in that moment inside of the keyword. So if you would like, if you want to do dynamically import, you call the keyword and you don't have event firing WebDriver, then you would have to go through the cache, which is, I think, is in a public API disclaimer, and you would have to go through the cache and do the wrapping by yourself. But it, yeah, doable.
And if it's not dynamic, can we at least import more than one?
I don't know. That's testing. I didn't test that part.
All right. If you have more questions, you can reach Tatu tomorrow in sprints.
And the breaks.
So feel free to ask questions from Tatu. Thank you, Tatu.
Thank you.